Hey everyone, it's Nikolai. So, a little backstory, I've been trying to work on this video for a couple months and things sort of just took forever. My original opener was now dated since it was a Valentine's Day joke about me having a cold dead heart and needing something to rekindle my emotions, but which, yeah, true. But with how much time I've spent on this already, let's just get into it. In high school, I would go once a week to the local Barnes & Noble and pick up a volume or two of manga. I'd pick up the staples like Bleach, Naruto, perhaps a little One Piece, but there was one in particular that I remember fondly, and that is Rosario+Vampire. I always used to carry at least one of the volumes with me, and in my free time, I would just reread my favorite parts. With it reaching about 10 years since the final chapter, I found myself not really remembering much about the story or ending, except for a couple moments here and there, so I thought what better time to dust off those volumes than now. What I thought would be a fun romance with interesting characters and a cool monster setting turned out to be a series about the idea of loss, love, and loneliness. And as I sat there finishing the final volume in a state of melancholy, I was surprised how after all these years I could pick it back up and have a completely different reading experience than my high school self. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Rosario+Vampire for the uninformed was a manga series written by Akihisa Ikeda that ran from 2004 to 2014 with a total of 24 volumes. If you want to be more technical, the first 10 volumes were published in Monthly Shonen Jump, with the magazine ending and later coming back to rebrand as Jump Square, with the series returning and having a season 2 that totaled 14 volumes, ergo 24 volumes. The series later got an anime adaptation that lasted 2 seasons and totaled about 26 episodes, but since the anime is sort of a loose adaptation, I'll really just save to talking about that later at the end. For starters, we have Tsukune, your average human who is enrolled into Yokai Academy. Tsukune is about as alone as he could get in an environment completely foreign to him. Not only that, but he's the only human in the entire school. See, Yokai Academy is a school where monsters learn to coexist in the human world. Yokai Academy also has a barrier that makes it near impossible to be found by humans. One of the rules is that monsters have to keep a human appearance during school hours to not reveal their monster identity. So, Tsukune is at least okay there. He can somewhat blend in. Fortunately, he also befriends a kind-hearted vampire named Moka Akashia, who has a magical seal in the form of a rosary on her neck. For some reason, Tsukune can remove the seal and unleash her other personality, dubbed as Inner Moka, who, along with having full access to her vampiric power, is also the opposite to Outer Moka, with a more brash attitude who also has a really killer kick. Even though Moka seems to be really upbeat and positive, she kinda has one of the more complicated backstories out of all of the characters. Her backstory becomes a main focus for the final arc, but the long short is that Moka is one of 4 half-sisters. They all share the same father, but Moka's biological mother is missing in action. Moka's true vampire powers were sealed with the rosary, and she was sent off to live in the human world for her own safety. Most of Moka's memories of her family and before the seal being placed are also locked within said rosary. In the human world, she was sort of an outcast and didn't really have any friends, so with her finally going to a monster school, she's excited to make some new friends who are somewhat similar. Since Moka and Tsukune are the first to bump into each other, it makes sense that they'd end up becoming friends. Because Tsukune can remove her seal and release her inner vampire side, she ends up protecting him from many monsters who target him. Over time, their closeness draws the attention of a certain succubus. Ah yes, Kurumu Kuruno. Probably one of my favorite characters from the series. So as a succubus, their race's goal is to find the ideal partner to, reproduce. Kurumu initially has a plan to hypnotize the entire school and have her pick, but that stops to a halt when she notices Moka unintentionally stealing the limelight. As revenge, she tries to steal Tsukune from her, only to fall for Tsukune and become friends with everyone. Really, every girl that becomes part of the main group are alone in their own way, and while they all want Tsukune's affection, they all bond together as friends. While Kurumu can come off as a fan service character, she has a lot more depth than that. Kurumu tries her best to romance Tsukune and oftentimes fails. Most of the time, Kurumu tries to keep up her appearance that she's really happy and not really bugged by Tsukune, mainly focusing on Moka. You know, she tries to keep up that mask, but throughout the series you do see it crack, and there are really great moments that sort of just look at her character and kind of just show this idea of wanting to be with someone, but no matter what, like, you know deep down it'll never work, and she's aware of that, but despite all of that, she wants to try as hard as she can. Throughout the series, Kurumu is put through trials that challenge her love for Tsukune and her friends. Yukari Sendo is also part of the group. She's a bright young witch who skipped a couple grades to attend Yokai Academy. Due to her intelligence and being a witch, she's often bullied and looked down upon by other monsters. In the beginning, Yukari was acting out mostly because she had no friends and was just trying to survive in the school in her own way. Moka initially defends Yukari's actions because she can relate to Yukari's loneliness, and Tsukune shortly understands her and decides to stick up for her. Because of this, Yukari has a crush on Moka and Tsukune. While she's a love interest, I feel it's mostly played for gags or almost a reader insert for certain situations. Mizore Shioryuki is a fan favorite character, and that's probably due to her attitude. Mizore isn't free from past trauma, however. In this universe, snow fairies have a limited time to bear children, and they have a declining population, which makes it all more important for them to find partners. In her past, Mizore loved a human, but when she revealed she was a monster, he rejected her. When Mizore attended Yokai Academy, there was a gym teacher who looked similar to that human, so she sort of had feelings, but when she confessed to the gym teacher, he took advantage of the situation and kind of forced himself on her. This caused Mizore to be a shut-in and not attend school until she read Tsukune's articles in the school newspaper and became infatuated with him. With Mizore returning to school, the gym teacher tries to frame Mizore so she could get expelled. Initially, Tsukune doesn't understand the whole picture, but when the pieces get put together, everyone sticks up for Mizore and defends her from the gym teacher. From that point on, Mizore is a silent observer of Tsukune and occasionally joins the group. Because Mizore likes to stay on the sidelines, she's often able to pick up on things earlier than others and help Tsukune or her friends. Ruby Hojo is another witch that is sorta part of the harem, but not really until the second half of the manga. Nevertheless, she's an important part of the group. Ruby was another witch who was raised in the human world. She lost both of her parents due to a hit and run, and Ruby was taken in by another witch who wanted revenge against humans for destroying the lands that she and her tribe lived on. Ruby was raised with resentment towards humans, and until Tsukune and the group came along and showed her a new perspective on monster and human relations, then she kinda changes. Lastly, there's Gine Morioka, the werewolf upperclassman. Very early on in the series, Tsukune and Moka join the newspaper club. All of the other characters mentioned end up joining as well, aside from Ruby, for reasons. The newspaper club was pretty empty, except for the only member who was Gine, or Gin. Gin is your average horny type of character. He shows up from time to time in the first half, but he ends up playing a bigger supporting role in the second series of the manga. Okay, with all the groundwork, I can finally talk about the story. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to go over the first 10 volumes, and then we'll go on into Season 2. The first 3 volumes are where we're mainly introduced to Moka, Tsukune, Yukari, Kurumu, and Gin. These volumes really set up the dynamic of the characters going forward, and not only that, but introduces Tsukune's first hurdle. At this point, Moka is the only one who knows Tsukune is a human, well, until the crooked school committee takes notice of the newspaper club and gets a tip from a teacher whom Tsukune and Moka had an encounter with previously, that Tsukune is a human. With this new information, the committee has the authority to kill a human for entering Yokai Academy, along with all of his friends, who aside from Moka were unaware that Tsukune was actually a human. The leader of the committee, Kuyo, then imprisons Tsukune and Moka. While Kuyo is beating Tsukune, the newspaper club are discussing the revelation about Tsukune. They ultimately decide that they want to save their friend. Though everyone puts in a good effort, Kuyo is too strong and Tsukune uses his body as a shield to protect Moka. While he collapses, he manages to release Inner Moka, and Inner Moka takes stock of the situation, and this is where the gears start turning for the rest of the story. See, Tsukune is practically dead, and in a last-ditch effort, Inner Moka pumps Tsukune with her vampire blood in hopes that it will cause his wounds to heal. Thankfully it works, and Tsukune is healed and temporarily has the powers of a vampire. With the help of Moka, the two are able to defeat Kuyo. Not only that, but since Tsukune fought Kuyo with vampire powers, the rumor of Tsukune being a vampire spreads around the school, so thankfully his human identity is safe for now. What's nice with this series is usually afterwards there's a chapter that addresses the contents from the previous arc. In this one, Tsukune is conflicted about becoming a vampire due to the blood injection previously. He still wants to be a human and kind of felt like Moka wasn't being considerate to his feelings. Because Tsukune defeated Kuyo, a monster obsessed with fighting is also tracking him down. Moka gets wrapped up in this dangerous situation but apologizes to Tsukune and reaffirms that she cares for him. This makes Tsukune realize and solidifies his resolve that if he has to become a vampire to protect his friends, he will. At this point in time, though, the vampire blood is only giving him temporary powers, but this really foreshadows a lot of the stuff that happens later in the series. The next big arc deals with Ruby. I touched on her story a bit, but this arc deals with a newspaper club investigating a plot of land in the human world that is haunted. In reality, it's home to two witches, Ruby and Lady Oyakata. This plot of land is also known as Witch's Knoll, and was once a home for witches that slowly died out. Lady Oyakata is the last of this group and also took in Ruby when she was young due to her parents being killed. Recently, humans plan to turn Witch's Knoll into a garbage dump, so Lady Oyakata devises a plan to attack the city to get revenge. The newspaper club gets tangled in this mess, and while they fight Ruby and manage to defeat her, they also tend to her wounds and she sort of sees an alternative to human and monster relations. Ultimately, Ruby sides with Tsukune and the group, which upsets Lady Oyakata because she feels that Ruby is being taken away from her. She then uses a spell to transform herself into a giant creature to destroy the neighboring city. Before she could, Moka is able to break her wand, which causes the spell to go haywire and make her blow up. Before she dies, she has a moment of clarity where she's able to speak with Ruby and resolve their conflict. With the explosion and the ruckus from the fight, Witch's Knoll gets widespread attention that draws out humans to protest the plans that they had to turn it into a dump. And in a way, she was able to save Witch's Knoll. Just like the last arc, this is building on the idea of bonds between humans and monsters. I think it just goes to show, especially with what happens later on, that even if Tsukune ran away from everything, these issues would still exist even in the human world and follow him. At this point, Mizuri gets introduced and the whole thing with the PE teacher happens. The one thing I didn't really mention is since Volume 3, Tsukune is constantly in dangerous situations, and more often than not gets seriously injured, only for Moka to give him an injection of her blood. Because he has so much vampire blood in him, he's able to activate the vampire powers without a new injection, but because he has so much blood in him, it's tearing his body apart from the inside out. This couldn't happen at a worse time, as the new group has set their eyes on Tsukune. This group has different names as the series goes on, but for now let's just call them the Anti-Schoolers. Essentially, they're a group that looks down on the more pure-blooded monsters like vampires, and along with that, they want to destroy the barrier covering the school, so monsters can cause a rampage and destroy the very ideals of this school. That's a little bit later though. For now, they want to target Tsukune and kill him due to a rumor that he's a vampire. To lure Tsukune to a trap, they kidnap Moka and use her as bait. During the battle, Outer Moka informs Tsukune that he still has a chance to have a normal life if he returns to the human world. She knows how Tsukune is, so she tries her best to push him away, but because this was a trap, they're all at a disadvantage, and Tsukune ultimately decides that he'd rather fight for his friends than turn back and return home. As they fight together, Tsukune is wounded again, and Moka has no choice but to inject Tsukune with blood. Because he is already at his limit, this causes Tsukune to turn into a ghoul. Pretty much a hollow shell that only functions on primitive instincts of vampires to kill and destroy. Inner Moka knows she can't let Tsukune roam free, and she's the only one who can take him down, so she makes the hard choice to finish it. In the nick of time, the school headmaster and Ruby show up to subdue Tsukune. The headmaster is actually skilled in seals and barriers, and fits Tsukune with a bracelet that seals his vampiric blood, very much like Moka's rosary. With that, Tsukune is able to return to normal. Well, as normal can be. The anti-schoolers are getting more active and frame the newspaper club, and the headmaster is aware, but he wants to use Tsukune as bait to lure out their leader. So Tsukune can help the headmaster or be expelled. Not much of a choice, really. With the school festival coming up, the headmaster assigns Tsukune to the festival planning committee. Firstly because they're understaffed, and also because there's a lot of anti-schoolers within the ranks. During Tsukune's time on the committee, he gets closer to the student council president, Hokuto Kaneshiro. Hokuto gives off this kind, strong, and dependable personality that draws in Tsukune. They grow closer due to their similar ideals, and they want to bring peace and change to the school. Because Tsukune is spending so much time with Hokuto, the girls get jealous and suspicious of him. Their intuition is correct because Hokuto is actually the leader of the anti-schoolers. And not only that, but he has been working with an anti-schooler that they had crossed paths with previously. Tsukune is initially doubtful until he walks in on Hokuto having attacked all of the members of the festival committee. With his true nature revealed, Tsukune has no choice but to fight him. Before his friends can help him, they're attacked by that previously named anti-schooler, Kiraya Yoshi. Kiraya ends up kidnapping Moka because they see that she's the biggest obstacle to their plans. The rest of the group backs Tsukune up. Even though they are fighting, Tsukune refuses to doubt Hokuto as he feels he's never lied to him. Hokuto is able to be subdued and the group calls in the headmaster. This was all according to his plan, however, as the headmaster holds the key to the school barrier, which is what they want to destroy. With the headmaster so close, he's finally able to get his hands on the key. On the flip side, in order to get to her friends, Moka damages the rosary enough for her inner side to release and escape Kiraya. Just as Hokuto inserts the key, inner Moka shows up. As the barrier starts to dissolve, Hokuto reveals that, just like Tsukune, he too was a human who entered the school, except he never made friends like Tsukune did and had to fight and get strong on his own. This hardship caused Hokuto to feel nothing but anger and want revenge against the school that turned him into a monster. Just like how Tsukune was injected with blood, Kiraya did the same for Hokuto. With their fighting power combined, Moka and Tsukune are able to take down Hokuto, but the barrier is still collapsing, and the only way to repair it is to imbue it with one's energy. The group comes together and they all put in their energy, but it's not enough. Tsukune is weak from all the fighting, and if he puts too much, he could die, but he decides to stake his life on the idea that he shared with Hokuto about bringing peace to the school. Even though they fought, Tsukune never lost his trust in Hokuto's words, and this caused Hokuto to stand up and resupply the rest of the energy needed to restore the barrier, and think maybe under different circumstances they truly could have been friends. Shortly after, Tsukune wakes up in the hospital. Everyone was treated and the headmaster was able to repair Moka's rosary. Hokuto was left in an unconscious state due to using too much of his power, for one injecting the barrier and also transforming. Kiraya then appears to inject him with more blood and takes him out of there. This moment's kind of interesting because for one, Kiraya is a vampire, and another is that he sort of has romantic feelings for Hokuto, which, Kiraya is a little bit jealous of Tsukune because he had a change of heart at that final moment. Pretty interesting. With all that being said, however, time passes and finally the festival is here. Everyone's family shows up for the first time and antics follow suit, especially with the mothers acting like their daughters. Moka is the one whose family doesn't show up, so she and Tsukune want to spend it together. On the next day, Tsukune's cousin somehow manages to enter the school festival because, in actuality, she's being used by a previous enemy to sneak in a mirror that reveals the true nature of monsters. Tsukune and his friends have to try their best to fool his cousin and hide the fact that this is a school for monsters. When the cat is eventually out of the bag, Tsukune talks to his cousin in a way that makes her realize that he's changed a lot since coming to the school, and he's not the same kid from when he was at the start of the series. At this point, this is the final volume for the first part of Rosario+Vampire, and it ends with 2 short stories. One where during summer, Tsukune finally returns to the human world, and all the girls end up going to his house and cause chaos. Moka ends up having to step in to bring everyone in line, but due to their antics, all of the girls are sent back for the rest of the summer. And as they're boarding the bus, it ends on a nice note with a hopeful outlook for the next school year. There is one more chapter in this volume, but it takes place earlier in the school year with a mimic vampire trying to get with Moka. I'd say it was a pretty standard chapter that would feel at home with the early part of the series. Not too bad, but the previous chapter felt like a nice open-ended send-off for the series. And with that, that's the first half of Rosario+Vampire, the first 10 volumes. So I guess it would be fair to say we're almost halfway through the series, but these 10 volumes were packed with a lot of content and some pretty solid arcs. When I was rereading this, I was surprised at how tight the series was. I think if Rosario+Vampire had ended here, I'd be fine. Sure, there are still a lot of unanswered questions, but overall these 10 volumes showed the series' strength with its characters, world building, and enjoyable arcs that ended at just the right times. The part with Tsukune's cousin was really nice and went on to show how Tsukune grew as a protagonist. Initially he was scared of his environment, alone, and when in danger, he'd run and have to rely on people to protect him. Now Tsukune is the one who will jump into danger if it means protecting his friends and the life that he's cultivated at this school. Yeah, I was pretty content with these volumes. I don't think I need to read anymore. These 10 were pretty solid, you know? It's a little lighthearted, you know, some action thrown in there. Pretty good. I'm good. I don't need any more. I don't think. You know what? Yeah, that'll be the end of the video. I think now is a good time to end the video. Oh, 14 more volumes. Yeah, surely we don't need to read these right now, huh? I mean, we could save these for later, right? I guess let's get into it, huh? If the first half was so fun, the second part might be even better. More fun, right? Right? Yeah, while the first season had its moments, Season 2 is where it's ramped up a lot more. Though Season 2 is a continuation, these stories included have almost different feel, and that's due in part to the author's approach to writing. Season 1, I told the story of the main character, Tsukune, growing up, because he was the focus. I didn't have room to draw a lot of episodes about his friends that I wanted to. From this volume on, I'm going to include those stories. If Season 1 was the story of Tsukune, then Season 2 is the story of his friends. Yeah, I feel that's a pretty accurate comment. The first 2 volumes are used to sort of ease everyone back into the series by having a fairly light-hearted intro, well, with a bit of action. The first 2 volumes are also a bit of a setup to Moka's backstory. Because it's a new school year, there are new students, and one of those is Moka's young sister, Koko Shuzen. Ever since they were little, Koko and Moka were fairly close. Moka and Koko would spar often. We get a little glimpse of the origin of the rosary because there's a short flashback of Moka telling Koko that she's going to have her powers sealed and live in the human world with her mom. At this point, we haven't seen her mom anywhere, so there's a little breadcrumb that will be touched on a lot later. Koko still never gave up on Moka and would constantly follow her wherever she goes to try and release inner Moka, the sister she remembers. Koko starts off a bit antagonistic towards the group, but these 2 volumes give her a chance to get used to the group and eventually join as a regular member and add more to the dynamic. Although I will say, just because she's a member, she's not really into Tsukune or the Harem. She likes his blood, but, you know, thankfully she's not another one. Oh yeah, just this isn't really that important, but Haiji Miyamoto is also introduced. He's an upperclassman who is good friends with Gin, and he's kind of an oddball too, and he sort of likes Koko, but that's about it. He sort of shows up. I just figured I'd mention it. Anyway, so after that we have our first big arc in the second season, and that is the Snow Fairy Village arc. Mizore gets a letter from her mom that the flower ceremony is coming up, and that she should invite her friends and Tsukune to attend at her village. With the warm weather, the group thinks that the snowy village doesn't sound half bad. We get a flashback of that human boy that Mizore fell for when she was a kid, and the significance of the snowflower. It basically signifies being together forever, so this ceremony is for snow fairies to present these flowers to potential life partners, and Mizore just so happened to invite, Tsukune. No big deal. Of course, no one's really aware of this, and in the dead of night, Mizore takes Tsukune to the flower field to try and present one to him. Yukari puts 2 and 2 together, however, and the girls head out to try and stop them. This seems like your average Mizore plot where she's kind of assertive with her intentions and pushes herself on Tsukune, but this time it's somewhat different. She's trembling and crying. Due to the declining birth rate and snow fairies losing their ability to bear children by their early 20s, one is supposed to find a person as soon as possible, and if they don't, they have an arranged marriage. Mizore is aware that with this ceremony she'll be put in that situation if she's unable to make Tsukune's hers right there and then. Tsukune picks up on this but is hesitant to accept her advances, and right when they get closer, Mizore is whisked away. Okay, so this arc introduces the main antagonist group for the rest of the series. You're sort of drip-fed plot points and information, but for the sake of this, I'm just gonna explain it. At this point in time at the story, there's a group called Fairy Tail, and they had ties with the anti-schoolers from the previous volumes, and a lot of the adversaries from last season. Honestly, their goal is sort of the same, but on a larger scale, where they want to break the status quo and send the world into chaos with monsters at the forefront. So that's the gist of Fairy Tail, and they want to forge an alliance with the Snow Fairy Village because there's an ancient energy source located in the village that they want to plant an egg that will hatch way later on in the series. But that doesn't get revealed till way later. I just figured I'd tell you now. It doesn't really do much later either, but it's important now, I guess. Oh yeah, so as part of the deal, they want a marriage between Mizore and one of the heads of Fairy Tail. The leader of the Snow Village has the power to predict the future, and kind of had a premonition that if they didn't accept this offer, there would be a lot of bloodshed. So, they kind of just offered Mizore up. Once Mizore is captured, she's given to the Fairy Tail branch leader, Miyabi Fujisaki, who kind of forces himself on her. Yeah, while that's going on, Mizure's mom senses something is wrong with their village leader, and not only that, but she's not just gonna let her daughter be a pawn, so she helps the group don disguises so they can reach the area Mizure's at and rescue her. When they finally reach Mizore, she is so closed in that she feels the only way to get out of the situation is to end her life. Before she could reach the bottom, she's rescued by Kurumu, who then decides to kiss Mizore. With Mizore finally saved, the group doesn't really have long to celebrate because they are attacked by another Fairy Tail member. This time it's Kahlua Shuzen. Yep, Moka and Coco's sister is a part of Fairy Tail. Just going to give this information now instead of later, but the Shuzen family are a family of vampires who are known to be assassins or muscles for hire. In this case, Coco and Kahlua's mother is a high-ranking member of Fairy Tail, so that's why she's there. And the thing with Kahlua is she doesn't actually like fighting, but she's incredibly strong. She can shapeshift her body, and when she cries, she lets out all of her emotions and feelings so she can go on a rampage without feeling any pain. Point being, she's really OP, and Tsukune and everyone are having a really tough time just fending her off, as she's been ordered to kill them all. When things are really dire, Miyabi calls off Kahlua because at this point, they planted the egg thing that I mentioned earlier, so their mission's done for now. As Fairy Tail leaves, we see Kuraya in the back, and he's working for Fairy Tail, so Hokuto must be there too. Everyone's skin was saved this time, and with that, everyone's able to head back to Yokai Academy in one piece. Because they were saved in the nick of time, and thankfully everything went okay, everyone's alive, Tsukune realizes that he has to get much stronger if he wants to protect his friends. The headmaster helped Tsukune in this endeavor by training his ability to control the vampiric power in his body. With the magical whip that can temporarily remove seals, he trains on and eventually gets one-on-one training with Inner Moka. These chapters are pretty fun and give us a bit more insight on Inner Moka's personality. From the beginning of the series, Inner Moka has slowly been turning more and more into her own character instead of this plot device to save them from trouble. Instead of a battle setting, it's just nice to see her in a more natural scenario. Really, from here on out until like Volume 7, it's mostly lighthearted fun stories of their school life, and there are some great chapters sprinkled in, which I'll briefly mention, but with what's coming up ahead, these are a nice pause before the story starts getting darker and building to the ending. When I think back on my time when I used to read Rosario+Vampire volumes pretty often, there's one chapter that always stuck with me, and that was Chapter 17, Dream of a Butterfly. So, yeah, if you probably can't tell, it's going to be a Kurumu chapter. Do I have a bias? No. I mean, maybe. Probably a little. Yeah. In this chapter, Coco wants Tsukune to fall in love with one of the other girls so she could have more time with Moka. To do that, she makes Kurumu accidentally use love hypnosis on Tsukune. Since the second volume of the original run of the series, Kurumu vowed she wouldn't use her powers to win Tsukune over, as she wanted to do it by her own merit, but this chapter really explores what would happen if you could make the person you love you. This chapter is interesting to me, mostly because it puts Kurumu in a situation where she finally has her dream scenario where she could make the person she loves love her back. And it explores that of like, well, what does that mean? Like, even though you can have them love you, if it's artificial, is it real? As this chapter plays out, Kurumu sort of gets her dream scenario where Tsukune's in her room and she asks what he wants, and of course he wants to eat, which, pretty funny gag, and Tsukune's expressions are really funny in this, and finally she wants Tsukune to say that he loves her, but even though Tsukune's being controlled by hypnosis, he can't say that he genuinely loves her. It kind of comes off robotically, which is interesting, but Kurumu kind of keeps pushing it because she wants to hear it back, and it makes her break down, and Tsukune, even though he's under hypnosis, he comforts her and genuinely says that he loves her, which, yeah, he does love her in a sense, especially in this, with the rest of the series, he does love her, but it's not in the same way that he loves Moka. And I think with this chapter too, Kurumu kind of realizes that, but she was happy to at least have her dream for one day, but those feelings will all just stay in the dream, and after that, Tsukune kind of wakes up and he doesn't really remember what happened, and yeah, of course the other girls realize that Tsukune was in her room, and the regular gags happen, and it's pretty funny. But man, this chapter was just really interesting because it's just, man, I sympathized with her, and it really grew to like Kurumu with this chapter. She knows the truth with Tsukune and Moka, but she's strong enough to move forward and still try to be as happy as she can, and she won't give up, and you kind of gotta respect that. There's another chapter too that sort of explores Yukari's relationship to Tsukune, and kind of just how he views her, not as love interest, at least from her eyes too. And it kind of just shows how Yukari thinks that everyone else views her still, because she still kind of has this self-doubt about her image and everything from the past. And this chapter also reaffirms like how Tsukune feels about her and depends on her as a comrade and teammate, and not only that, but as a friend. So that one's a really good chapter too. And with that, we get into Volume 5. Now, Volume 5 is mostly about the group going back to the human realm for vacation on the headmaster's orders. While on vacation, they cross paths with a siren who lives with Marin Kawamoto, a human. Now, she owns a inn where people can stay, and she works there with the human. And it's pretty interesting. And also, it turns out that the siren used to go to Yokai Academy, and she's an alumni. And not only that, but she used to be in the newspaper club with Gin. Because sirens have a really powerful ability, Fairy Tail sets their sights on the siren, who's known as San, as she'd be a valuable asset. Because she won't go peacefully, they want to take her by force, so they have to fight the branch leader. This branch leader is also a siren and had actually killed Marin's husband a few years prior. San had kept her powers and identity a secret from Marin as she was afraid of her being rejected, but with no choice, she has to fight. With San's help, they're able to defeat the branch leader, and meanwhile Gin and Haiji went out and dealt with the rest of the branch's office. After all is said and done, Marin accepts San for who she is, as she's like a daughter to her, and Tsukune was able to get some hands-on fighting experience, which is just what the headmaster had wanted. Overall, this volume was pretty good and self-contained. I liked it a lot. One of my other favorite characters finally gets introduced, and that is Fang Fang Huang. So Fang Fang is the heir to a Chinese-based monster mafia known as the Huang family. Fang Fang enrolled as a freshman to try and recruit Tsukune to his family, mostly due to him destroying a fairy tale branch alone. That sounds kind of familiar. Well, that's what Fang Fang thinks. Like I said earlier, it was Gin and Haiji's doing, but still, Tsukune is pretty strong, so not a bad pick. Oh yeah, Fang Fang is a Yasha, which means he can summon 100 spirits, but he's not really good at it, so anytime he does summon, it's a roll of the dice. He's fun. He's honestly a nice addition. His enthusiasm to have Tsukune join his family gets misunderstood and just causes chaos with the girls' dynamic of fighting over Tsukune. And not only that, but it's refreshing to have another reoccurring male character instead of just all female members who are part of the harem, or just add more to those jokes. It's nice to just have a different side. Sure, Gin is around, but he's not really around all of the time. So yeah, Fang Fang, I like him. And even though everyone really gets annoyed by Fang Fang, he's always positive, which is played for laughs a lot, and yeah, he's just funny. And it gets told a little later, but as the son of the mafia boss, people don't really approach him, and he's really lonely aside from having his sister around a lot, so him making friends with this group is really nice. So with these chapters with Fang Fang, we get a couple nice school chapters and stuff, but some pressure starts building, and during these school day chapters, Outer Moka has been communicating with Inner Moka more frequently, and because of that, she wants Inner Moka to experience the school life for once. So they ask Tsukune to remove the seal for a day. Inner Moka really just wants to experience a normal life for once and not be known as a fighter, so she tries cooking and it doesn't really pan out so well. Boo! Anyway, she wanted to make a pie for Tsukune, but the results were pretty disastrous, to say the least. Due to everyone's efforts helping Inner Moka, she was able to actually make something edible, and you get to see a different side of Inner Moka, which is kinda cute. And just when your heart is full of fuzzies, the hammer comes down. Just as Tsukune puts the rosary on Inner Moka, she's still there. Fang Fang chimes in that her seal is broken, but they happen to be in luck as his family and his grandpa are masters at seals and sorcery. He also happens to be one of the 3 Dark Lords. They're these legendary beings that once defeated a great threat to the world years ago. With little to no choice, the gang is headed to China to hopefully repair her rosary. Unbeknownst to the group, when they depart to China, they're actually being hunted by Fairy Tail. At first it's played off that it could be an assassin from a rival mafia family, but in truth it's Fairy Tail, and they're currently after Moka. This volume starts really going into Moka's backstory and the origin of her rosary, but that's a little later. The group manages to safely make it to China, but some familiar faces are on their trail. Kiraya and Hokuto, they finally made an appearance. With everyone arriving relatively safely to China, the group finally gets to meet Fang Fang's family. And yeah, you can definitely see why he is the way he is. And finally, one of the 3 Dark Lords reveals themselves, the great Toho Fuhai, one of the strongest sorcerers in the monster realm. And it just turns out he's a big weeb. In his old age, Master Toho Fuhai went to the side of 2D girls, but don't let his looks deceive you, as he can repair Moka's rosary, and not only that, but he was a friend of Moka's mother. Interesting. When Toho Fuhai finally inspects Moka's rosary and he's gonna repair it, a trap is set off. Now this trap sucks Tsukune, Mizure, and Toho Fuhai into the rosary itself. While their consciousness is sucked into the rosary, their bodies are left in the normal world in a sleep-like state. Inside the rosary, Tsukune and the rest are in a dreamlike realm that shows them Moka's sealed memories. From this volume until the last one, we're slowly given pieces of the puzzle for a backstory of Moka and her whole family. I had to reread things a few times over the volumes just to make sure I was correctly understanding, so for everyone's sake I'm just going to chronologically lay out the whole story, but keep in mind some of this information isn't really revealed until later volumes. With that being said, let's go back in time for a bit. So let's go back to the 15th century in Europe. There was a king of a small, unnamed country, and that king happened to be an immortal vampire named Dracula. Yeah, that name sounds familiar. Well, anyway, he actually wanted to create a country where humans and monsters could coexist, but when word got out that he was actually a vampire, well, medieval people do what medieval people do and slaughter everyone except for the immortal king, because, I mean, the name kind of goes hand in hand. And there was one surviving girl. Not much information given if she was a vampire at this moment or she was a human. Let's just say she's a vampire, just for clarity. Either way, there were two survivors of this massacre, and yeah. So this king and the girl then traveled alone together, and well, the king went from Dracula to Alucard, and yeah, that girl also happened to be Moka's mother, Akasha Blood River. You know what's funny? I'm just gonna say this now. For years, I thought it was Blood Driver. I don't know, for whatever reason, I read it as, like, a blood drive. And then it wasn't until I was rereading this, like, 30 times trying to confirm the story that I realized, oh, this could just be read as Blood River. Wow. So for 10 years, I thought it was Blood Driver. I don't know. I thought it would have been, like a blood drive, but, like, a blood driver. Like, she has a really, like, crazy, like, pile driver, like, wrestling type move. This isn't really important. I just wanted to get this off my chest, because yeah, I'm still shocked. Even just reading my script, I'm like, oh yeah. So anyway, Akasha Blood River. Man, that sounds cooler. That sounds cooler than Blood Driver. Anyway, Akasha Blood River and Alucard spend years, probably a couple hundred, just traveling the world. Whether Alucard gave her blood and she's immortal too, or she was a vampire from the start, you kind of don't really know. Couple throwaway sentences here and there. You're kind of just left to fill in the blanks, just like right now. So they travel around for X amount of time, and at some point Alucard has kind of just had enough with the world, so he fuses with hundreds of thousands of monsters and becomes this giant creature and just starts wreaking havoc on the world. At this point, Akasha, Tofuhai, and the Yokai Academy headmaster work in tandem to defeat Alucard, but since he's immortal, the best Akasha could do is seal him with her power. And by sealing Alucard from the inside, she was able to stop him, but in the process their blood is fused and they become linked. So if she uses any of her powers, it has a chance to awaken Alucard from his slumber. For whatever reason, Alucard was considered a first ancestor for vampires, which is a title that basically means they possess a lot of power, and if one drinks their blood, they too have that power. A couple X amount of years go by, and, oh God, I forget exactly. These kind of things are just thrown in one random panel or one random sentence in a page, but if I do find it, I'll just throw it up on the screen. I think Moka's father is the one who got Akasha out of Alucard's body, but because their blood's still linked, she can't use any of her powers, otherwise it'll awaken him from his slumber. I think. If not, it said like, oh, the Shuzen family were the ones who got Akasha out of the seal. But that's that. Anyway, Akasha's out. She ends up marrying Issa Shuzen, who is Moka's father. So at this point, now we finally know Moka's father and mother. So Issa is kind of a player. He has more than one wife. So he has Moka with Akasha, right? And then he has a second wife, who is Gyokuro Shuzen, who is Koko and Kalua's mother. Issa also was with another unnamed woman who was in China, and they had a daughter who is Aqua Shuzen. So going from oldest to youngest, it's Aqua, Kahlua, Moka, and finally Coco. So Akasha had trouble conceiving, and when she was birthing Moka, she had to inject her with her own blood to bring her back to life because as a baby, Moka pretty much died. So there we go with the blood injections again. In doing so, with those blood transfusions, it caused Moka to be linked with Alucard as well, because, well, she has Akasha's blood in her. So growing up, it was mostly Moka, Coco, and Kahlua at the Shuzen mansion. But then one day, one of her other sisters showed up, who was Aqua, who had been living in China, and recently she had been looking for her father, and when she did that, he invited her to live with them. There's more to Aqua's story and lineage, but I'll just leave that for the end, because that's another thing. That's another thing completely. We'll just... Aqua's there at the Shuzen mansion with everybody. And basically, Aqua wanted to move into the Shuzen house because she desires the power of a first ancestor. Because Akasha defeated Alucard, she is Aqua's target. However, a year passes and she grows close to Moka, so she hesitates a bit. About a year goes by, and one day Aqua shows Moka Alucard's slumbering body under the castle, and that causes Akasha to accelerate her plans to have Moka's powers sealed, and for her to live in the human world away from all this. So, there's a lot of gap filling here, but it's just kind of assumed that Akasha was suspicious of Aqua, and so she sent Moka away to kind of lure out Aqua. They start fighting, and when Moka's being driven away in a car, she runs out and heads back to the house. And when she finally enters it, she sees her mother being cut in half. This causes Moka to spiral into a fit of rage and unleash her powers, which, yeah, that's not great because it also awakens Alucard. And even though Alucard's somewhat waking up, he's not really a conscious being or really speaks or anything. He's kind of just this giant tentacle type monster that gets drawn towards, I guess, energy signatures. So anything he can find to try and absorb, he's gonna do so. And because Moka unleashed a lot of that power, it targets her, and it's not letting go. So Akasha isn't really left with many options. So she has to get close enough to Moka to place the seal on her powers, and she herself needs to get absorbed by Alucard so she can seal him from the inside again. At this point, we finally learn the true mystery behind the rosary. For one, it's sealing her powers to prevent Alucard from awaking anytime soon. Another is that it's sealing off all of these memories that just happened, like the fight with Alucard and her mom and Aqua and them fighting. Pretty much all of that is sealed away, which is what Tsukune and everyone else that got sucked into the rosary are witnessing right now. And the big thing is, it creates a false personality to protect the body, while Moka's true self is slumbering away inside. So, that personality that the rosary created happens to be Outer Moka. You know, the main version of Moka that we've grown to know. All of these chapters, turns out that it's a pseudo-personality created by the rosary to protect the main body. And, yeah, if she has pink hair, it's mostly because that personality is based off of Akasha. That little tidbit isn't really mentioned until the end of the story, but that's a can of worms for the final volume, which, if you keep watching, I'll talk about. But as far as everyone else is aware, during this state where they're inside the rosary, they do know that Outer Moka is a pseudo-personality, which is still pretty devastating, not only for them, but for the reader as well. So as Toho Fuhai, Mizure, and Tsukune were witnessing all of these sealed memories, he mentions that they're at the end and this realm is closing, so they have to escape, otherwise they're going to be trapped inside the rosary themselves. And while Toho Fuhai and Mizure are anxious to try and escape, Tsukune's kind of mind broken because, yeah, the main girl that he fell in love with was just a fake personality. And he, poor guy's going through it. The guy's going through it. He can't even talk. So while everyone's in there, let's check back in the real world when their bodies are sleeping. So in the real world, Fairy Tail is advancing towards the mansion, you know, the Huang family mansion, where everybody was. Yeah, that was a while ago. Everybody's in the mansion and Fairy Tail is closing in. And of course, Fairy Tail's goal is to retrieve Moka, and the one leading this right now just so happens to be Aqua. The Aqua mentioned earlier. The Aqua who fought Moka's mother and was in that whole flashback. That Aqua, yep, she's here. And since Tsukune, Moka, Mizure, and Master Toho Fuhai are kind of just... they're all in a sleep-like state, they're kind of useless, so time is of the essence. So Kurumu uses her succubus powers to dive into Moka's mind to try and retrieve Tsukune and the others. While Kurumu is successful in locating them and is trying her best, Tsukune is... bro's going through it, and he sort of drifts into one of Moka's other memories, and it was after she was sent to the human world. She kind of doesn't remember anything because her memories were locked off. She's confused, crying, and seeing the Moka he knows like that, he's kind of just thinking back on the time that they've spent together. And it's in that moment that, I mean, even though it's a memory in a weird state, he decides to confess his feelings for her. Even though he knows that it was a pseudo-personality, his love is true. And just as he did that, Mizure and Kurumu were able to get a hold of Tsukune and pull him back. So they kind of heard the whole thing. Man, what a gut punch. We're only at volume 8, and the protagonist actually chooses a girl, which is kind of surprising, but honestly, Tsukune has been there for Moka for most of the series. He's Team Moka all the way. If you read the series, it's kind of been clear, especially with the Kurumu chapters from earlier. No, I'm not biased. No, I'm not upset. Maybe a little bit, but you know, Team Moka, you gotta respect it. So thankfully everybody is able to get out of the seal, and just in time because Master Toho Fuhai unleashes his true power and is going toe-to-toe with Aqua, because Aqua is pretty strong, just like Kahlua. Actually, a lot stronger than Kahlua. Aqua then uses Fang Fang's parents as hostages to try and bargain to get Moka. Moka awakens and chooses to go with Aqua to stop the fight because, yeah, Aqua is really OP. She has this weird, like, dimension sword thing that hardly anybody can counter. She's really strong. So Moka decided to sacrifice herself and go with Aqua. So as Aqua flies away with Moka in the Fairy Tail hot air balloon thing, Outer Moka managed to come back because just in the nick of time, Toho Fuhai was able to repair her rosary, so Fairy Tail's plans to have Moka awaken Alucard are put on hold for now. As Moka and Aqua fly away and Fairy Tail retreats, Tsukune's left there crying on the ground because he was kind of useless in this situation. I mean, he's strong, but he can't hold a candle to Aqua at this moment, so he's pretty frustrated with himself. And just as he's on the ground, he's approached by two familiar faces. Yeah, Hokuto and Kirai are back, and if it's not obvious, they are a part of Fairy Tail. But they tell Tsukune that their main branch leader have different ideals than the main headquarters of Fairy Tail. But they both need Moka for something, so they'll give the group info on Fairy Tail HQ if they can help retrieve Moka. They don't really have many options, so they have to take them up on their plan because who else would be their in to a giant headquarters up in the sky? Not many people. But Tsukune feels he isn't strong enough, especially up against Aqua, so he asks Master Toho Fuhai to train him. everybody just starts training. They all form their little groups, and while they're making good progress, Tsukune is hitting a wall. Even though he's getting better at combat, he's nowhere near strong enough to fight Aqua, so Master Toho Fuhai offers Tsukune a choice. He can alter Tsukune's body piece by piece to allow him to wield magic and cast a handful of spells to counter Aqua's set of skills. It comes at a cost, as it can kill Tsukune because, yeah, he's basically destroying every fiber of his body and restructuring it, so along with being painful, it's extremely dangerous. Kurumu rejects this because, you know, she doesn't want Tsukune to die, but he has this resolve like he's made up his mind and would do anything for the girl he loves. This volume is just pain for Kurumu. It's clear that more than ever what the endgame is. Kurumu, being a succubus, is a monster of lust and love and is just crushed and a mess. This volume has Gin being more attentive and comforting for Kurumu as he sees how much she's hurting. Which is surprising because Gin isn't really used that often, and when he is, it's not like this. So you get a bit of whiplash, but at the same time you're like, oh wow, okay. So he does care, which is nice. But of course, Kurumu is very stubborn and doesn't want to give up on Tsukune that easily. Meanwhile, a couple blocks away, Tsukune is going through it. Master Toho Fuhai is going through the procedure, and it starts by him injecting these needles imbued with magic that destroy and restructure his body. And when he's finally at the last needle, Tsukune's body just can't take it anymore and he's passed out. So the procedure's a failure. Tsukune doesn't want it to end like that, so through sheer will, he stands back up. But because he stood back up in such a state, it causes him to ghoulify. In the past, we've seen Tsukune turn into a ghoul, and while it's crazy, this time it's a lot different. Because the vampire blood in him, which is Moka's, which is in turn Alucard's, mutates him into this souped up vampire ghoul. Kurumu heard all of the commotion and came running, and even though Tsukune is a ghoul, she can see he's still somewhere inside trying to resist. Master Toho Fuhai wants to take Tsukune down as he's too dangerous of a threat to leave alive, but seeing Kurumu's determination, he says that he'll try and finish the procedure to bring him back to normal. Kurumu puts her life on the line as well and steps forward to charm Tsukune with a kiss to bring his soul back. And boom! The body modification procedure is complete. With the procedure going well, Tsukune is a lot stronger, and we move into the final arc of the series. Not only that, but Kurumu finally got a kiss with Tsukune, and there's a little funny bit after where it's kind of like Kurumu and Tsukune could have happened. He starts having these feelings for her, but he's just too dedicated for Moka, which I respect, but man, it hurts. So with the procedure a success, everybody spends the rest of the month training and building up their strength. And when the promised day arrives, they infiltrate Fairy Tail HQ, which is this giant castle hidden in the sky. So, thankfully they had the help of Hokuto and Kiraya and that branch office to get them in. They all don disguises and they take a tour of some of what the HQ has to offer. And while they're looking around, they come face to face with the actual leader of Fairy Tail. And that would be Gyokuro Shuzen. Yeah, that name sounds familiar. It's because I mentioned it a little earlier, and that's Koko and Kalua's mother. So Gyokuro wants to use Moka to awaken Alucard, as they are now in possession of his body. There's a big reason that the Fairy Tail HQ is in the sky, and that's mostly due to Gyokuro's ability. So she can basically track anybody within this HQ, especially with it being in the sky, so there's not many places to be. They're kind of in a cage. Hokuto said that they should retreat because she kind of, she can sense that they are imposters, and yeah, they have nowhere to go. Hokuto says they should retreat, but since they're already there, the group decides they should just keep heading down further where Moka is, because no matter what, they're stuck there. As they descend the headquarters, the group runs into Fairy Tail branch leaders. With each branch leader, someone stays behind to fight so the others can advance. Each fight gives one of the characters a chance to show off the fruits of their labor from training. First off, you have Ruby versus Rika, the 5th branch leader, a thunder beast who uses electric attacks, which are kind of useless against Ruby. Well, they're kind of ineffective. Ruby's gonna Ruby, and yeah, the fight is interesting. She uses these cool new magic powers and this like Iron Maiden suit to fight him, and she manages to come out victorious, and she rendezvous with everybody afterwards. The next up is Fang Fang and Yukari. They stay behind and fight the 4th branch leader, Xiaolong Mao, and his assistant Lud, or Lude. I don't know, you gotta throw me a bone here. Some of these names are kind of weird, and there's nothing to base off except what I'm reading it as. I'm just gonna go with Lud. Anyway, he has an assistant. I really like this fight though because it establishes that Fang Fang and Yukari had recently grown closer with their month of training. They're relying on each other and trying as hard as they can to protect one another. This fight is a little more interesting too, as Xiaolong is the leader of the Mao family, which is a rival Chinese monster mafia. They're also somewhat related on his mother's side. This fight gives a little more backstory of Fang Fang and his friend rival from another family. While Xiaolong seems evil at first, he's kind of forced to be in this position. See, while Gyokuro is the leader of Fairy Tail, this fight gives us a little hint that there's something more at play, as there's this shadowy figure pulling strings from the background. Because if we jump back in the past just a couple of years, the Mao family and the Huang family were going to make peace, but before that could go through, Xiaolong's father was murdered by the apparent founder of the Mao family, and who happens to also be the original creator of Fairy Tail. Because of that, Xiaolong has no other choice but to work with Fairy Tail, because he'd suffer the same fate if he resists. So Fang Fang and Yukari are victorious and they subdue their adversaries, but before things are peaches and cream, they encounter another branch leader. So with that all happening, on the other side, everybody else encounters Miyabi Fujisaki. Yeah, the guy from the Snow Fairy Village arc. Turns out he's the 1st branch leader. Not only that, but he is the one who made this whole infiltration plan, which is kind of surprising. Tsukune and the others are wary, and just as they try to move forward, Kiraya shows up. He teleports Tsukune and Ruby to another dimension and attacks Miyabi, as Gyokuro found out he was the one who came up with this whole infiltration plan. So while Miyabi's fighting Kiraya, he sends off Mizure and Kurumu ahead, and they finally get to Moka. And Moka's there, but she's in a magic circle that's slowly corroding the seal and will unleash Inner Moka, and that will awaken Alucard. Aqua made this plan because it's the least painful way to, I guess it's the least painful way to make the rosary break. Anyway, that's going on. And since the magical seal was made by Aqua, it's kind of a given that she's there. So Mizure and Kurumu try their best to fight off Aqua, but yeah, she's kind of OP, so they don't really have that much of a chance. While Outer Moka is witnessing all this, she feels somewhat guilty because of the realization that she was a pseudo-personality, and meanwhile, Mizure and Kurumu are fighting as hard as they can just to save her, which makes her feel really guilty. So she tries to yell at them to stop, but you get this really sweet moment of Kurumu and Mizure saying that that doesn't really matter, and it's the bonds that they've built this whole story, and Outer Moka just means as much to them as Inner Moka does. And yeah, it's really nice. We then cut back to see what happened to Tsukune because he was teleported by Kiraya earlier. And he ended up being teleported to this closed-off dimension to have the rematch of a century. Remember Kuyo from, like, the 3rd volume of the 1st part? The, like, fire guy, the fire fox guy? Yeah, he makes a return with an updated look. Looking swell, looking nice. And turns out he's the 3rd branch leader of Fairy Tail. So Tsukune still has trauma from their first fight, and he's somewhat on the defensive. And it isn't until Kuyo mentions that Yukari and Fang Fang had been killed by that other branch member from earlier. They actually haven't, but he doesn't know that yet. We don't know that yet. So this is kind of a shocker page, to be honest. But that's enough to sort of snap Tsukune out of it and solidify his resolve and realize how much he's been training and what is he even fighting for. And while Kuyo has gotten stronger as well, Tsukune is a different breed altogether. Not only that, but it seems that Alucard's blood is affecting Tsukune as he's a lot colder and has murderous intent. And due to the overwhelming difference in power, Kuyo retreats in a weird portal to escape this dimension, which means Tsukune and Ruby are locked in. Things aren't looking the best right now. Kurumu and Mizure are busy with Aqua, Ruby and Tsukune are locked in the dimension, and Fang Fang and Yukari are supposedly dead. Supposedly. But Team B finally makes their arrival, and it composes of Haiji, Gin, Toho Fuhai, the bus driver, and Coco. So, some reinforcements are finally on the way. Kurumu and Mizure are defeated, which send Moka into a fit, and it breaks the seal, and inner Moka is unleashed. With Moka releasing her power, it causes Alucard to wake up and send weird giant tentacle things all across the HQ like roots from a tree. With all the chaos ensuing, Tsukune and Ruby manage to escape the pocket dimension thanks to Ruby's magic, and just in time as Tsukune and Moka are finally near each other and have a chance to see each other at last. Aqua is nearby as well, and she happens to see Tsukune and Moka together, and, well, she's a bit jealous of Tsukune. For most of her time, she mentions to Moka how much she loves her and needs her in her life, and only her to rely on. Well, seeing Tsukune fuels her fire more, and she wants to prove to Moka that she doesn't need Tsukune by killing him, as he's not strong enough to protect her. Before Aqua could reach him, however, he speeds right by and embraces Moka. Moka, seeing all the damage and loss that her rescue has caused, has her feeling weak and guilty for having everyone trying to save her, as everywhere she goes, she's just a burden. At least that's how she feels. If everyone else is going this far, it's most likely not true. But yeah, Tsukune heard some of her remarks and assured her that he can take care of himself now, and he can also protect her. It's a really sweet moment because the walls of Inner Moka are finally down. Moka and Tsukune work together to fight Aqua, as Master Toho Fuhai's training proved successful, because Tsukune he's schmoovin', boy is schmoovin'. With Aqua struggling a bit, Gyokuro and Kahlua move in and pin down the two. Gyokuro rips off Moka's rosary because she believes it was a key made to control Alucard. Which, yeah, she inserts it into a device she made, and she's freely controlling the giant tentacle things. Just when things are turning south, Hokuto shows up with Fang Fang and Yukari. See, they were alive! And not only that, but Team B makes a fancy landing and are ready to give support. With everybody in attendance now, people get split up, groups get split up, and fights start happening. One of the bigger fights that happen is Coco versus Kahlua. And this fight is cool, not only visually, but story-wise, because you get a little backstory on Coco. You get a little bit of an introspective look on her feelings as, I guess, the weakest link in the Shonen family, because she's the weakest, especially in comparison to Moka, Kahlua, especially Aqua. And Coco is just trying her best to try and fight Kahlua, because Kahlua, she's kind of crazy. She's really overpowered. She can regenerate like her whole body and transform it into like bat knives. Really wild stuff. And Coco's just trying her best. She has some support from Haiji, that guy. He's pretty strong, so at least she has someone in her corner rooting for her. But yeah, also the Shonen family also show up, and they're sort of these mind-controlled assassins, somewhat. They're obviously being controlled by Gyokuro, and they're fighting on the battlefield, so a lot of people have their hands full in this fight. Oh yeah, I should mention too that apparently Moka's father is part of these assassins, and he's there on the battlefield, and Toho Fuhai is trying to handle them. But he mentions that this Issa Shuzen on the battlefield is a phony, which it's like a body double. I'll talk about it later. It gets revealed that it's not actually Issa Shuzen, but for now, ooh, wow, her dad's there, I guess. Okay. Either way, things are really hectic right now, and to make things worse, Gyokuro had experimented on all of the other Shuzen members and injected them with Alucard cells, and they start to transform and turn into these giant creature things, which causes Tsukune to resonate with them because he has Alucard cells, and yeah, basically they're all ghoulified, but it doesn't look like how Tsukune's does. Then again, I guess it wouldn't really look like that because he's the main character, and of course he has to have a cooler design than what they're stuck with. But yeah, Tsukune is resonating with them, which means that he will be ghoulified as well because of the Alucard blood. And he realizes he doesn't have much time left, so what he does is he removes his seal and unleashes his full power to hopefully try and stop Gyokuro from going crazy and destroying the world. With Tsukune powered up, he does really well fighting against Gyokuro, well, as best as he can, and as they exchange blows, the memories of Moka power him through, and it gives Tsukune enough power to land a decisive blow against her. Gyokuro is a bit of a schemer, however, and plays her trump card. Firstly, she causes the HQ to descend and, well, eventually land smack dab into the human realm, in a big city. So yeah, that's not good. And with the chaos and damage from that fall, it'll give monsters the upper hand to cause chaos everywhere. Along with that, she uses the rosary and her powers to fuse with Alucard, becoming this unbeatable entity monster thing. It's interesting. It's an interesting design. Everyone regroups and they split up to deal with the problems at hand. The bus driver is trying to take control of HQ to limit the damage of the fall. Koko, Mizure, and Kurumu team up against Kahlua. Fangfang and Yukari try to handle the branch leader that they encountered earlier. And finally, Moka, Tsukune, Hokuto, Ruby, and Toho Fuhai are gonna deal with Gyokuro. While Hokuto and Tsukune briefly meet, and before they could jump into action, they're confronted by Kiraya. So Kiraya wants Hokuto to come with them so they could get out of there, but before they leave, he wants to kill Tsukune and the others. Spending more time with Tsukune, who's the same as always, makes Hokuto stand up to Kiraya and protect Tsukune. With Gyokuro and Kahlua going this far, you kinda have to wonder what their reasons are, and thankfully this volume finally gives us some insight. So let's go back in the past a bit. Again, let's get the first big one out of the way, and that would be Gyokuro. Like, why is she doing what's she doing? What's up? What makes her brain tick? Let's just go back to Akasha again, and Akasha is Issa's first wife, right? She had trouble conceiving, and Issa was also married to Gyokuro as she was his second wife, and he had children with her first. When Akasha finally gave birth to Moka, though, Gyokuro became extremely jealous and spiteful towards Akasha. In an attempt to win over Issa, she had another child with him, Koko, but that didn't go as well as she'd hoped. It didn't get her what she wanted. She wanted attention from it, and it didn't really work. So she grew to dislike Koko as well. What also grew was Gyokuro's desire to take away everything Akasha had ever cared for. So yeah, that would explain why she wants to break the seal, destroy everything that Akasha loved, like coexistence with humans and her daughter, and the seal that she made for her daughter. Yeah, that explains that one. Okay, next up, let's go with Kahlua. So why is Kahlua doing what she doing? So Kahlua, she kind of had to grow up really quickly. We get some flashbacks of her younger, and we get her mainly just talking about her mother and experiences with Koko. And what she basically says, and you see, is that she realized that her mother was alone and hurting. So she took it upon herself to be the one to stand with her mother to the end and kind of be there for her as an emotional support, which as a child, that's kind of a demanding job, and I can see why it made her do what she did and why she was sticking with her, because in her mind, her mother was alone. So yeah, it would explain also why she cried a lot and her feelings towards her sisters, and kind of this weird juxtaposition of like her personality with her sisters and how she acts. So there we go. That's another one checked off. Oh yeah, I will mention too that Kahlua, even though she was doing this with her mother, she still kind of wished she would die. So she was hoping that one day one of her sisters would end her. So she's kind of hoping that Coco will be able to do that, which that's kind of sad. Especially on Coco's side, because, you know, she didn't really receive the love of her family that she wanted, aside from Moka having a sisterly relation. So she just wanted to have a family, and instead she's put in this position where she has to fight her other sister, and that's pretty sad. So now that we know what makes them tick somewhat, let's jump back to the current times. And what's happening right now is Gyokuro's taunting Moka a bit with the rosary and saying that it was a curse from her mother and not actually a gift. And when Gyokuro finally has Moka in her fingertips, she's gonna land a decisive blow, but just before it hits, her body stops. And that's when Toho Fuhai fills everyone in that the rosary, you know, the whole key thing that Gyokuro used to control and fuse with Alucard, was actually responding to Akasha. So, as we know, Akasha is pretty much fused with Alucard, so it kind of makes sense that the rosary is linked to that, and that's why it's responding to the commands. With Gyokuro frozen in place, Moka takes the chance to take back the rosary, and in doing so, the Alucard body absorbs Gyokuro, and outer Moka finally returns. And with it seeming like things have been resolved, Tsukune and Moka look at one another, and just as they're about to have a nice embrace, the true villain of the series finally makes their appearance. And yeah, this is one of the other things that get kind of complicated, so we have to go back in time one more time. Let's go. When Akasha was fighting Alucard with the other Dark Lords, the first battle with Alucard, before he could be sealed, he created a doppelganger that slipped away. Much like Akasha, this guy's kind of confusing. So Alucard made the doppelganger, and that doppelganger had many names during the series. So for starters, he was the starter of the Mao family and Fairy Tail, and he was the branch leader, Miyabi Fujisaki. Didn't see that one coming. So that's the reveal, and he's been around since Season 2, Volume 3. When reading these chapters, I kind of got whiplash from it all, and oh yeah, he's this guy, and this guy, now he's this guy! It's kind of a lot. You're kind of just whelmed when it happens. At least for me, I was whelmed because there were just so many things going back and forth. Not only that, but it gets even more confusing because he's also this branch leader, and he was this thing. And it's like, what? Bro, come on. Anyway, so basically Alucard made a clone. He's here now as an Alucard clone who has a voice and can talk, and he's not just a weird tentacle monster. And I'm sure you're wondering, if Alucard made a clone of himself all that time ago, why did he wait so long to reveal himself or set his plans into motion? And there's a reason for this. This was answered. So, Alucard stood in the shadows on purpose because he didn't know the full power of the rosary that Akasha had made. He let Gyokuro go wild and go after the rosary so he could see its true power and if it was anything for him to actually worry about. And when seeing it really couldn't control him or have power against him, that's when he finally decided to show himself. So now, everybody has to deal with Alucard, one of the very first ancestors, who's really strong. And it's basically now like there's two of them, because there's Alucard's original body that still functions if it's awoken, and then there's the Miyabi Fujisaki human body Alucard double guy, who is very witty and can actually talk and is as much of a threat as the body. So lots of fun there. But that's not all. Let's look at Aqua for a little bit, because we get a little bit on Aqua finally as well. So despite Aqua seeming pretty villainous, she actually does care for Moka, so she was working with Fairy Tail and Alucard because the deal was to only break her seal and not kill her, but, you know, Alucard just wants to do both, because why not? Which upsets her, and Aqua is this way towards Moka because she looks a lot like an old sister of hers. Not an actual sister, but like kind of an adopted sister, because when Aqua was young, she lived together with another vampire as orphans in China. And one day that sister fell in love with a human, and Aqua killed him because she didn't trust him. This upset her sister, who then went back to the human village to try and smooth things over, as everyone was kind to her there. Well, they were kind, except, yeah, because of that, they kind of killed her and put her on a wooden stake, and Jesus, that art is, that art is, something else, man. And ever since then, Aqua wanted death to mostly humans and became extremely protective and obsessed with Moka. Aqua is also related to Alucard in some way. At the earliest, Alucard could be her grandfather, but who knows, maybe he could be a great-grandfather. There's a lot of time in between from when he, I guess, was reborn as the doppelganger and where we are currently. Regardless, they have a family lineage, so yeah, let's just say the Shuzen family Thanksgiving will be pretty awkward. And with Alucard wanting to kill Moka, or yeah, kill Moka and break the seal, Aqua's pretty upset. With the deal off, Aqua tries to fight Alucard as best as she can, but she's not really a match. And yeah, Moka ends up gravely injured, and the headquarters is crashing into the human world due to Alucard's main body going on a rampage because the seal was broken and he's there. So yeah, things are not really looking too great right now. Okay, and here we finally reached the final volume of Rosario+Vampire Season 2, and the final volume of the whole series. So yeah, and it's a thick one. As you can see here, it's a thick one, especially in comparison to the other ones, so a lot of content to get through. With that being said though, let's get back to the story. With the seal broken, Alucard's true body has awoken and is rampaging across the city. Surprisingly, no one is around. And that is because the headmaster, aka one of the Dark Lords, had worked with the humans earlier to evacuate the city. The headmaster, who we actually get to see under those robes, and yeah, he's pretty cut, man. Like, woo! You start going to church. Oh yeah, Toho Fuhai's there. And also, San, the siren from that earlier volume, she's here, she's helping. Great. Also, the military is helping. So it's mainly these three holding back Alucard, because after the HQ fell from the sky, everyone was kind of separated. And, yeah, while that's going on, this happens. So, Alucard and the other Alucard, so the body of Alucard and then the Miyabi Fujisaki human Alucard, ended up fusing together, and they're kind of just this one being now. So that's who they're fighting against. It's not just two separate entities. And yeah, they're trying their best to hold off or defeat Alucard. In all of the destruction, Outer Moka and Tsukune share their final moments together. Moka and Tsukune are finally transparent about their feelings, and they share a kiss. Moka doesn't have long, as she was stabbed in the heart. And while it looks like Moka dies, Aqua comes across Tsukune and Moka and says that while Outer Moka might have faded, there's still a chance that they could save Inner Moka. If Aqua can give her a blood transfusion, it could possibly resurrect her, much like Moka had done for Tsukune. As much as he wants to help, he's not a full vampire, so he can't give his blood to her, and Aqua also just trusts humans, so she doesn't want him to really help. While Aqua is giving her as much blood as she can, it's not enough to heal Moka's wounds. Tsukune insists that he wants to help, and maybe, just maybe, if he became a full vampire, he could inject her with his blood. Without second guessing it, Tsukune breaks his seal to transform into a vampire. but by doing so, his body can't control it all, so it's just gonna run wild. As Tsukune injects Moka with his blood, it causes the two's powers to resonate, causing it to tear his body apart and send a giant beam in the sky. This beam draws everyone's attention, and the main group all head towards it. Because of his selfless act, he won the respect of Aqua, and she tells everyone she can make a magic circle that if everyone chips in, they can help Tsukune control his powers. Somehow. It's the power of friendship. I don't know. It's not really explained. It's just, there it is. They can somehow help. And there's a really nice 2-page spread of all of them forming a circle, and Moka is successfully revived, and Tsukune is able to control the vampiric power without the seal. So now Moka and Tsukune basically got a huge buff, along with Tsukune actually becoming a vampire. And with their new looks, they also have new powers, because they can now manipulate their blood to create super dense armor, which is what we're seeing right now. And these two are able to easily fight with Alucard, but he still has a card left to play. Remember the egg thing from the Snow Village? Yeah, well, it gives birth to these giant monsters that start hatching in different parts of the world. Alucard wants to destroy the world and build a new one on its ashes. He then decides to play with Tsukune a bit by revealing that the headmaster had been grooming Tsukune the whole time to become what he was today, from a human into the monster he is now, and that he was nothing more than a pawn. And while it is true, none of that really matters to Tsukune because he cares more for the friends and the bonds he made along the way. He also hopes to find an understanding with Alucard as well, and with those words we see that all of Tsukune's friends and allies are alive and ready to help fight off all of those newly hatched monsters. But yeah, Moka and Tsukune are fighting him, but if you remember when I said he was the immortal king from back then, he constantly regenerates, so even though they're really strong, they're not really making any progress because he can just regenerate. So Tsukune thinks back on all of the battles that he's had and comes to the conclusion that the rosary must be a key to defeat Alucard. So Tsukune takes the rosary off of Moka's neck and places it on Alucard's body. Because Alucard had been fighting and using a lot of energy, it's just the time that Akasha had been waiting for because his control was somewhat weakened. And the rosary allows Akasha to actually rebuild herself and take control of the giant Alucard body. Akasha tells Alucard that it's time for them to leave and that the wishes they had from long ago had been passed to the next generation. Alucard submits and reminisces on the past when it was the two long ago. With that, Akasha, with the help of the other Dark Lords, uses a disintegration spell on herself and Alucard. Before she goes, Aqua tells everyone that Outer Moka, the one that they knew, was actually a clone of Akasha, and with the rosary being used to rebuild Akasha, she has the same memories of Outer Moka. So in a way, this Akasha is Outer Moka, but it's also her mom. It's, strange. Tsukune and Outer Moka, or Outer Moka Akasha, have their final last goodbye, and she goes. And with that, the biggest threat of the human and monster world has been defeated. We get one last moment with Kiraya. He meets up with Kuyo, who is carrying Kahlua. So at some point, Alucard had given her blood so she could live, and after the fight with Kiraya, Hokuto passed out in a coma-like state because he used all of his powers. Kiraya says he'll never forgive Tsukune, and we get a hint towards their future as there's a little blurb that Fairy Tail will be led by Kiraya in the future against Tsukune. With the main villain defeated and everyone coming out mostly alive, except for Outer Moka, we finally reach the epilogue chapter. And the epilogue tries to capture the feeling of the very first chapters, with Tsukune going to school and enjoying a chaotic school day. We get a little tidbit about the repercussion of Alucard attacking the human world, and that both sides are discussing how coexistence could work. In this chapter, Moka's father had been hired to protect Tsukune from a hitman, and this means Tsukune also has to meet Moka's father. The reason for him not being in the final battle or even in Fairy Tail is that Gyokuro had subdued and confined him. Now that he's free, he's trying to rebuild the Shuzen family and work as a bodyguard and assassin. We get to see inner Moka, or I guess the true Moka, enjoys school life, and honestly, she's just like outer Moka with an upbeat and cheery personality. Tsukune is kind of conflicted because the girl he loved kinda, died, and with this chapter there are classic hijinks of the harem trying to get in the way of Moka and Tsukune. This just causes Issa to tell Tsukune to be careful with harems, as he speaks from personal experience. Aside from protecting Tsukune, he is there to also train him because the headmaster wants him as a successor to Yokai Academy, and to be its new headmaster in the future. While training, Issa also tells Tsukune that basically the outer Moka and inner Moka were the same person. Outer Moka was an alter ego of Akasha, but it was born and raised inside Moka. A short while after, Tsukune notices that Moka's hair has slightly pink ends, sort of signifying that the two became one. We get these short little shots of everyone's lives, and the main group heads to the human world to go on a trip. And that's where it ends. That's the final chapter. Unless you bought the actual physical volume. See, in all of the volumes, the author adds these fun little 4-coma panels that are mostly fun or give us a little extra info. In the final volume, we actually get some confirmation on a couple of the pairings. Firstly, we have Gin and San. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Next up, we get Haiji and Coco, and aside from Haiji's gag, I do find the two's personalities are fun together, so not too bad. And next, which is probably the biggest, is Yukari and Fong Fong will eventually get together, which is kind of big, especially for a harem character to have an alternate person that they end up with. And I mean, I guess Yukari was never really in contention to be the one to be chosen, but it's still nice to at least see these two characters have somewhat of an ending together, but at the point in their relationship right now, or I guess friendship, it's no way near that yet. We also get a couple tidbits like Aqua and Kahlua are working with Issa again for the Shuzen family, and that Kiraya takes care of an unconscious Hokuto and dresses him up, which that's kind of funny. But with that, the series finally comes to a close. Now, Rosario+Vampire does have an anime adaptation, and it has 2 seasons, and well, I figured I'd save it for last, mostly because there's not much to say. The anime mostly emphasizes the school day life and harem hijinks, which is, it's fine. I mean, it knows what it is and what it wants, but the anime and manga are total polar opposites that are related in characters only. Just for reference, Season 1 only adapts character introduction chapters, and the big finale for Season 1 is the fight with Kuyo. You know, the one from Volume 3 of the first series. And not only that, but Moka injecting Tsukune with blood almost never happens, so a lot of the plot can't really happen in the anime without that existing. The second season introduces Coco, much like the second season of the manga, but it only adapts a couple chapters from Season 2 up to like the second volume. And it uses some stories from the first season of the manga. So yeah, there's not much to say. It's more lighthearted harem, and if that's up your alley, there you go. Okay, and since everyone's filled in with the manga story, I want to share my thoughts. So I thought the first season of the manga was really good. If this was an anime with a couple of seasons and it ended there, I'd honestly be pretty satisfied. Sure, there were some questions, but overall the pacing and the characters were really consistent. Season 2 of the manga, however, had quite a few issues. From the beginning until the start of the Fairy Tail headquarters arc, I thought it was really good. I liked the arcs delving into supporting characters, and the addition of Fong Fong and Coco added a really nice mix-up to the series to keep it fresh. Overall, Season 2 was a nice extra that answered a lot of mysteries, but tried to fill in way too much in the last handful of volumes. To rip the band-aid off, I'll just talk about the pairings here. So, I honestly thought the Gin x Kurumu stuff was a nice tease of a possible pairing. For once, it was nice to see Gin be used a little differently instead of the pervy upperclassman, and be a caring guy. Throughout the series, there was an emphasis that Gin was into Kurumi, but in the end it felt like they pulled back from that idea in the final chapter to pair him up with San, which again I said was fine. I like San. For the most part, the second season was really solid, just like the first. It wasn't until the end that things started to fall apart a bit. Alucard, Kahlua, Gyokuro, Akasha, and Aqua all suffered from having their backstories fractured in parts. I tried my best to condense their stories and make it as easy to understand as possible, but oh man, there were moments where I was thinking, okay, what's a first ancestor? Or, wait, how was Akasha a first ancestor? Only for me to thumb through the volumes and find a one-off speech bubble from a character sorta explaining it. For example, why did Alucard give in so quickly at the end? Oh, well, Karaya had a one-off speech bubble saying, oh, his goal was to expose the world to monsters, so he got what he wanted. Okay. I guess for a lot of the material in the end, there are answers, but if you want to go deeper, that's left to the reader to fill in the blanks. Alucard also being multiple characters was a bit of a head-turner, because just as you thought you had a grasp on what was going on, he keeps turning into someone else. By the end it was revealed he was Miyabi. I was like, wait, is that all? Is he gonna turn into someone else too? It was a lot to take in. Oh gosh, and the can of worms with Akasha, she was really confusing. I had to reread certain sections just so I could understand everything going on. Aqua suffered a little too because her bond in relation to Moka was all mostly off screen, so the love she had for Moka felt kinda off. The final bit with Outer Moka and Akasha kind of soured at me at the end too, because it's like, okay, so Tsukune was actually in love with Moka's mom and Moka? The epilogue tries to explain it with a random line from Issa, but as a reader, I just sat there because it was like the main heroine died, and as much as I could understand Inner Moka turning into a regular girl, it felt like whiplash. Same thing with Tsukune too. Throughout most of the series, he would talk big about loving both Mokas, but the final chapter finally, it mostly felt like he loved Outer Moka, mostly. Like he has feelings for Inner Moka too, but to me at least it didn't come off as strongly, especially since he was having his own turmoil about his feelings for Inner Moka. At least everything was answered for the most part. All of the pieces were there. As confusing as some parts were, at least it was a pretty decent ending as far as manga goes. I might seem a bit negative, but I still think this series was really good. I'm glad I got the chance to reread it. The art of the series is really top notch, and when the comedy hits, it hits. And when the characters are spending time together at school, it fills me with a sense of nostalgia of my own school years hanging out with friends. That's one of the shining qualities of this series. They feel real and they have a lot of development. Their relationships feel real, and even though they love the same person, they do care a lot for everyone else. The majority of these characters all had a lot of tough life experiences, and for them to all gravitate towards each other felt really believable. With the whole series being about completely different people and creating bonds of love and trust, yeah, that fits. If you buy the manga volumes, you get a good amount of 4-koma comic panels that give you a lot more information on characters or the author debating what it means to be moe. It's pretty clear that this series had a lot of love and thought put into it. I'm super happy to finally make a video on this. I mean, when am I going to get the chance to do a deep dive on Rosario+Vampire and talk about a series that meant so much to me years ago? While Rosario+Vampire isn't really talked about these days, I hope some people might check it out, or even the author's newer works, because after Rosario+Vampire, he recently came back with a new series called Ghost Reaper Girl. And while I haven't had the chance to read it, I did end up stumbling upon his Twitter account, and it's sort of cool to see the person behind the scenes, and you get some extra blurbs about information on its creation, and even a little bit of his drawing process, which is, being an artist, I found that really cool. Currently the series is on hiatus due to health issues, but I wish them the best, and hopefully they can come back soon. So Rosario+Vampire, man, this was a really tough series to talk about, because especially when it's something you loved, you don't want to find its flaws later on. I did come out of it with an appreciation for some chapters and certain themes that I didn't realize when I was younger, which was really nice to see. I still rock Team Kurumu. I did back then. I still do today. Loved Kurumu. The art is really good, especially the evolution. Like, here's an example from the early chapters, and here it is from later. And it's kind of funny too with his Twitter. I mentioned he talks about how even his older art like this, which still looks really good, he's kind of embarrassed to post, which I find kind of funny, because as an artist I can relate to that on a level. I mean, I'm nowhere near as good as they are, but I can relate to that feeling. But yeah, Rosario+Vampire is, I would recommend it. I tried my best to summarize as much as I could, but reading it is a completely different experience. The art is really good. If you buy the manga, you get those 4-panel comic books at the end. Super funny. You also get these cool posters in the manga panel, or in the manga volume, that you can pull out. They say they're mini posters, but I'm not going to tear these out. They're super cool. Also, it's kind of nice to at least have like the colored works of a mangaka in the volume, instead of just like a black and white thing or a little picture in back like how they do with Bleach volumes. I honestly really loved that. Even when I bought the series back then, that was one of the driving features for me to go out and get the volumes, because I'd have this nice little art print, which is super cool. Yeah, the anime, not much to say. It's a thing. It exists. I mean, I can't hate on it too much, because that's how I found out about the series. Or at least I watched the anime first, and then I read the manga, and I was confused, because I'm like, well, season 2, it's supposed to be the season 2 of the manga, right? It wasn't. It wasn't until I went back and I bought the first series and read it. Super great. But yeah, no, I still love this series. I really do love it. Little complicated feelings on the end. The whole Akasha bomb thing, very strange. Like I said before, I think my main gripe with this series is that, like, they give you these breadcrumbs, and then, like, when you have a question for the series, some character will have one line to kind of explain it for you, but it doesn't feel deep enough, or it doesn't feel like as satisfying. Like, especially at the end with the conclusion and Issa talking about the personalities and how they fused. It makes sense, because inner Moka had to be so battle-hardened to protect her body with the powers, the vampiric powers, but to have her practically be like outer Moka, it was very jarring to see. And it kind of just felt hollow, because outer Moka just technically died earlier on, so I had very conflicted feelings about that. I guess I related to Skune about that more than I thought, huh? Yeah, overall though, it's a good series. It's a good experience. Great art. Some really nice moments. I definitely think it's worth a check out. And I'll probably read Ghost Reaper Girls soon. It's on the Shonen Jump app, so if none of you know, the Shonen Jump app, it's like $3 a month, and you have a whole catalog of manga, and you can read like 100 chapters a day, which is kind of hard to do. Like 100 doesn't sound a lot. Like you say, oh, 100 chapters, that's not a lot. But if you try to binge 100 chapters, it takes a while. Unless you're like speed reading it, I think the 100 is a pretty good amount of chapters you can read per day. But yeah, Rosario+Vampire's on there. Ghost Reaper Girls on there. So for $3, you could definitely read like this whole series in a month. You don't get the 4 coma panels. Maybe they're on other sites. I had the volumes, so I can't tell you if they're published anywhere. Also, there's like a special chapter that was released in the box set of the manga, which I don't have because I didn't want to buy the box set, because I already bought like mostly all the volumes. But yeah, the volumes are really good physical things, because you have the, like I said, the art and whatever. But I'm just kind of rambling on at this point. I still love Rosario+Vampire. Hopefully this video interested you into checking it out. I hope so. If not, maybe this will just suffice, and now you have a broad overview of the story, and if somebody brings it up, you can you can at least talk about it. Hopefully people talk about it. I still love this series. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's gonna be it from me today. Hopefully you check out one of my other videos. I don't know, I make a broad amount of topics on here. Hopefully I'll be back soon. I have some ideas for different things. Hopefully those won't take too long, but that's gonna be it for me today. See you, everybody.